how change takes place, what are the characteristics, what are the various levels of change, and what are various models of change. And an understanding of the models of change is very important for you as an HR practitioner, because that will help you to understand at what place, at what time, with which people you should actually implement the organization development intervention. Hence, poor understanding of organization change will actually impede your ability or will not give you good results of your organization development interventions, right? Therefore, let us start with trying to understand change in a more better way. Though I am very sure you must have studied this in your OB class, but we will add more perspectives to understanding this change phenomena in an organization. So when I talk about change, let us take the first issue, that is forces of change. You should have a clear understanding what are the various forces of change, right? So what forces of change are there around us in our environment? First look at the external environment. As yesterday we saw very much in that open system diagram, that organization input comes from the external environment, right? And since the input comes from the external environment, so therefore we need to see what all changes, this change is taking place in the external environment, which we can, which actually influences your organization's activities, organization dynamics, in fact. So therefore, what are those external changes? Let's quickly get one by one, which you are very much aware of as you have studied business environment also, and in other papers we have been discussing it time and again. One is technology, that is any shift in technology. Technology may include re-engineering, it may include quality initiatives, it may include, your information technology, it may be digitalization, it may be artificial intelligence, which is very much influencing the organization dynamics in today's business scenario, right? So that's technology. The next one, let us look at the economic conditions. Right, economic conditions. Now, if there is a recession, now what's happening right now? Why you can see everywhere the economy is going down, and that is one of the reason why this lockdown was waived out and we are unlocking. One of the greatest reason for unlocking is to avoid or for recession, to avoid recession, or to avoid too much going down of the economy, right? So these things, economic conditions, influence how your organization works, and you must be, plenty examples are available how industries are facing problems, how organizations are, reducing their production or changing. But at the same time, remember, at the same time, there are organizations which are, which are coming up to changing their products, the products that are more in demand. Say mask is suddenly high in production, sanitizers are high in production, soaps, such things are high in production because it has more demand now. So many organizations must have changed their either capacity utilization or changed or diverted into different products so that they can get and take up the opportunity available in today's business environment. So what I mean to say is economic conditions are put an important influence on your change. Hence, they are an important forces. The third one is global competition. Global competition has, especially in case of Indian context, post 1991 reforms of globalization, the coming of multinationals has in India opened the doors for global competition, and global competition always keeps the organization on toes to change or change their strategy or their action plans so that they can compete and better in the global scenario with the other multinational organizations. So especially you see organization change and development practices or interventions, you will find these interventions very much developed in such organizations which are competing globally. That means which are MNCs and which are competing with MNCs of other product area or other industries. So what is happening in such case, wherever the competition will be more, you will have to introduce new ways of doing things to attract your customers or so that you can provide better services and high quality products, right? So therefore global competition is one of the very important forces. Another important force is of course your world politics. Now world politics, you can see in case of oil, because of the oil manufacturing companies, or the which we call the oil, basically the oil or energy resource politics that keeps on playing. Apart from that, in today's environment or scenario, if you see the whole initiative of Indian government to focus or highlight on entrepreneurship and skill development through Atmanirbhar plan of the country is actually more focused on trying to build up the capacity and competency of people in India so that the American or European companies or companies from Japan who are pulling out from China can actually invest in India, and they can get a good pasture in India and carry out their business activity here. So these are all nothing but, if in a broad view you will try to understand the interlinks, you will see that somewhere world politics plays a very crucial role, right? The next one let us discuss is social and demographic changes. Social and demographic changes, right? So when I'm saying social and demographic changes, it basically reflects the changes taking place in form of you see cultural changes. When we say social means cultural changes come in it. Then you have different generations at the workplace. Your X generation, baby boomers are almost retired now, but then you have X generation, you have Y generation, and the millennial generation is joining in there, and sooner Z generation will also be joining. So when there are different people from different generations at the same workplace, definitely perception of these people, attitude and behavior varies. And when these people have to work collaboratively, it has to be, it's a tough task. So at that point of time also, many organizations use different OD interventions so that they can make these people from different generations, different cultural environments work together in harmony and effectively also, right? Next, let us move to some of the internal changes. Internal changes. Now, what are these internal changes? These all are the basically external changes, right? They are external changes which we get as input in an organization. If you remember yesterday's diagram, what was yesterday's diagram was you have input, then you have output, then you have throughput. Throughput is your actually transformation, you know, which we also call transformation process, and then there is a feedback. Never forget this feedback loop. I'll come back to this discussion, the importance of feedback loop and the characteristics of a system a little later, right? So these are all your inputs from the external environment. Now, when we talk of internal changes, it talks about the changes taking place within the organization. For example, redesigning of work. Okay, redesigning your work. Then if there is a turnover problem, if there is, you know, change in structure, there is change in structure of the organization, that is from vertical to hierarchy, you are delayering, or you know, you are increasing your staff, you're diversing into another product that may be, or there may be issues like strikes, or you know, layoffs or such kind of issues. So these are internal changes that come up in an organization. So remember, so ultimately what we can say when we talk of forces of changes can be one, external changes, can be two, internal changes. These are the various set of external changes and these are the various set of internal changes, right? So I hope you are clear. Next, let us move to another slide. Now in this, now let us discuss various levels of organization change. Levels of organization change. So in organization behavior, we study that, you know, basically organization is at 3 levels, isn't it? Robbins suggested that organization is at 3 levels. The level 1 is individual level. The second one is group level. The third one is your organization level. And here we will have a fourth one. The fourth one is multiple organization level. Remember, when we are discussing organization change and development, we need to remember always in our mind that this change is mostly because of external forces which are making the organization change. See, what will happen if an organization doesn't change? The organization will collapse, isn't it? As you must have heard of survival of the fittest. Darwin's theory is survival of the fittest, and survival of the fittest actually is related to evolution. You keep on evolving to survive in the conditions of at that point of time. Similarly, for an organization, it is important to evolve and keep on changing itself so that it can survive in the business environment. And therefore, here in this case, we have a fourth level, that is your multiple organization level. Now let us quickly see what issues do we have at each of these levels as far as changes takes place. So what actually changes at individual level? What things change at individual level? Individual level, what is the unit? Unit is the employee, isn't it? Employee is the unit. So at the level of employee, what is changing? Employees are changing, isn't it? Employees, new employees come and old employees leave. So employees change, as well as there is change in knowledge, skill and attitude of employee. These things never stay constant. They keep on evolving and changing based on time, conditions, etc. Right? So when we are talking about individual level, we are more focused on KSAs and the change in people and the number of people changing. Now let us move to the second level, that is group. So what happens when we work in group? Think about a group. So main feature is, you know, interrelated tasks. So what happens in a group? If you talk about the characteristic of a group, the first important thing is more people, two or more people come together and work. When two or more people come together and work, there is interrelationship between them. Whenever there is an interrelationship, we need to, you know, at many times redesign work. Wait, we need to redesign work. We need to address conflicts. We need to work on good communication. May I write here? We need to work on good communication. Okay? So if I am working in a team of 4 people, I need to develop, especially your work from home is a very beautiful example. So I am working in a team of 4 people and we all are seated in our homes in different parts of the world. And how do we, if we don't have a very good communication system, there may be a problem. And in this case, you can take the efforts your university is taking up to develop a learning system so that the university students can together join into one system, its own system, so that you know, the communication can be better, the communication can be smooth, and we can customize it as per our requirement. Are you getting it? So therefore, at group level, these are the various issues that come up, and hence we can also put down in 2 other words. The words can be, one is your conflict management has to be taken care of. Another is communication has to be taken care of. And the third thing is your inclusion and diversity. Now, since you are all doing HR as a specialization, this inclusion and diversity is very, very important part for you to understand what diversity is and what inclusion is, isn't it? So diversity is when people from different demographic profiles and different ethnic groups, or different age groups, different people with different education, different parts of the world come together, then definitely their perception are oriented with their environment, and now they all are coming together and working in a common place for a common objective. So their perception has to be somewhere aligned, so that, you know, they work together. And so this diverse group has to be managed well, which is one of the biggest challenge for HR people, remember, in multinational companies, managing diversity. And to manage diversity, we use inclusion as an approach. Inclusion means to include. Don't let anybody outside the, you know, periphery or premises, you know, the premises without boundaries. Many times we don't suppose, you know, let people see the boundaries, but then we don't allow the person in our group. That means what? We are not actually opening up for that particular person or such people. So inclusion does what? Inclusion gives an opportunity to those people through various organization development incentives. One of the most beautiful example of in this case is in IT industries, when the number of females as IT engineers started increasing by 2003, 2004, companies like Infosys started organizing leadership development program for women only. And the basic objective of them their basic objective was to improve the abilities of women in the leadership role, because since they had a large number of women population and they wanted women to go up in their careers as well as be team leaders and do well in the role of team leaders, they conducted a lot of such, so these programs were what, these are part of their OD intervention to include women in the leadership group. Okay, here the group is leaders. Now in leaders group most were men, so now they wanted more and more women to come up. Similarly, organizations go for many such activities and OD interventions and initiatives so that they can include the everybody and give them an opportunity, right? So this is about the group level issue. Now let us come to organization level. What happens at the level of organization is actually the change in whatever changes that are taking place in the external environment. The organization accordingly brings about change in its strategy. Change in its strategy and change in its process of doing, right? And because of this there will be change in actions. All these changes are at organization level. Okay, and finally we have multiple organization level. In multiple organization level, one of the main example is your mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions are an example of organization, multi-level organization level, where in such organizations wherever M&A are going on, are going to take place, they have the HR people have to meticulously work out a plan to manage the people. See, when mergers and acquisitions take place, what all things come together or owned by the powerful company? They are all the resources. Among all the resources, people are only the resource which are sensitive, which are living, and which respond, isn't it? So therefore, any failure on part of HR to manage people during mergers and acquisitions are usually a failure in M&A. So we will be in future dealing with some of the case studies in case of mergers and acquisitions, right? So now let us move to the third part in our today's discussion, that is types of changes or characteristics. If at any moment you feel I'm going fast, please you can unmute yourself and let me know or ask your doubt. You're always welcome. So when we are talking about types of changes or characteristics, at this point, when we talk of types of changes, let us first come into, okay, the Zoom is also saying we have less time now, 10 minutes. Let us quickly move. So we have, when we talk about types of changes, the first one is we can divide it into planned or unplanned. Right? Planned or unplanned change. Now, what is planned change? When we when we set objectives, right? When we set objectives and we prepare action plans based on what? Based on strategy, market information, right? When based on this we bring about change in strategy, and then we plan actions and we make changes. It may include change in policies, practices and their implementation, change in technology, whatever. When we plan it out thoroughly, assuming the conditions of today, that is planned change, right? And unplanned is something which is, which just happens. It's a happening, or it happens by, for example, there is an accident in any organization, or say there is a natural calamity in an organization, or something like that happens. So these are something which are unplanned changes. So at that point of time, you make certain changes quickly or take some quick decisions so that you come out of this situation, or at that point of time, the situation demands some decisions from you and you make certain changes. So they are unplanned. So what we will, one thing you be very clear, organization change and development deals with planned changes. So what we study in organization change and development is in detail, we see the process of doing planned changes, how planned changes are made, carried out and implemented in an organization, right? So that's part of it. And next, let us move to magnitude. Right? The first one was planned or unplanned change. The second one is magnitude. So when I'm saying magnitude, it means degree, to degree of severeness, right? So in terms of change, we can say either the change is incremental, that is the change is slow or in small quantums, right? Or the other one is your transformational change. For example, suppose you are changing some groups or teams in your organization. That is an example of incremental change, okay? But suppose in your organization you had a vertical structure of the organization and you are completely now replacing it with a flat structure of the organization. That means you are restructuring the organization, right? So here restructuring will be an example of your transformational change. Whereas if you are just changing few members of a particular group, or you are just changing some communication patterns, some redesigning, some minute changes you are doing on a daily routine or increment, they are referred to as incremental changes. And transformational changes are more radical. Suppose your organization is going for diversification, or your mergers and acquisitions. These are all transformational changes. So how we can differentiate it further? Transformational changes mainly involve the whole organization. They're more holistically. That means in such changes, all the stakeholders of the organization are very much involved or are influenced by the process of change, right? Whereas when you are making incremental changes, that means at that point of time only certain number of people to whom that particular task involves or influences are getting changes. So this is the magnitude of the change. And the third important category is continuity, right? And when we talk of continuity of change, it can be episodic, this is S, episodic, or it can be continuous change. Episodic change or continuous change. Now what happens, how they are different? Episodic change is not frequent, remember. It is not frequent. It happens sometimes, so it is explicit. Yeah, you can define it explicitly. Right, explicitly defined means you are very clear when the next change is going to take place, if it happens every time. Like for example, let me take an example here. Such organizations who are involved in producing something which is seasonal in its types, right? Suppose it's a let me take an example. Suppose it's a organization manufacturing umbrellas, right? So, or suppose an organization manufacturing woolen garments. In such cases, the organizations which are seasonal in nature, normally the production process is very high just prior to and during the season, and post season again there is a high decrease in the activity. So therefore in such organizations the employees permanency nature of the job, or you can say the number of people employed in the particular organization on the payroll, differs at these two periods. Now, and this is very explicitly defined because it is very clear that since it is a seasonal kind of an activity, therefore people of certain category are hired during that season only, right? But what happens in continuous change? Whenever change is continuous, that means change occurs regularly, and we need to, be prepared for the change. And in this context, we can take the example of those organizations which are in dynamic business environment, For example, take any multinational company, say the software, you can take the information technology companies, or you can take any other this automobile industry, which are multinational companies. In multinational companies, globally, wherever changes are taking place, they are continuously influenced by such changes. So they need to be very robust in managing, or they need to develop a competency and ability of people to manage or counter such changes. And that is the reason why, you remember, in the managerial managerial skills class, I used to tell you that develop resiliency in yourself. Now, resiliency is required to work in such environment, because always there will be some anxiety, always there will be some uncertainty, and whenever there is this anxiety and uncertainty, you need to make a lot of decisions in a fast process. So basically you need to be ready to change, right? Ready to adapt to changes, changing technology, maybe change in work process, changing place you work. So in such cases are examples of continuous changes.